Shmuley Boteach. To understand why Shmuley Boteach is one of the most famous and important rabbis in the world today, you don't have to pore over any learned Talmudic texts or go to a Sabbath service. Rather, you should look to the list of his Hollywood contacts and friends, as well as look to the bestseller lists where he has published a number of volumes, including the famous Kosher Sex and the famous Kosher Adultery. His specialty is the Jewish approach to relationships and marriage, and he approaches that in the language of self-help. And because of that, because he speaks at that kind of normal conversational level, he's been hugely successful. He says that one of his ambitions is to turn Judaism into the new Buddhism. Is that right? Shmuley, come up here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is my question. Richard Dawkins said 3 or 4 things, and I'll chart them in the order that he said them. The first was that he has a problem with religion because it's not true. He doesn't care how much benefit it brings to society, because if it's a lie, then why live a lie? Fair enough. But why does he have such a problem with religion? How many other lies does he live that don't bother him at all, even though they seem at times to have a social function? Let me give you an example. He lives in a country called England. Is it true that some people are born royal and some are born only ordinary? Does anyone here want to raise their hand and say, I believe that some are born much more special than others? Is it true that you should live in a castle or in a palace that you haven't worked for? Anyone want to raise their hand for that? Or don't we live in an egalitarian society that utterly refutes the entire belief in a royal family? But he hasn't attacked the royal family, even though it's not true. It's a tradition, but that tradition doesn't bother him. What about family? What about marriage? Richard Dawkins is married. I certainly knew his wife when I was at Oxford. He and I were friends, actually, and he's actually a very fine man. I wish he were here so I could tell him that. He was always extremely humble and courteous, especially given his fame and renown. And he's a true intellectual. He's never allowed himself to become trite or superficial. Even his arguments today were extremely well presented. But is marriage a true institution? Doesn't evolution say that male nature is to seek the widest possible distribution of the gene pool? Monogamy is a lie. And there's a lot of men who think that monogamy is a type of wood. In fact, if the whole purpose of evolution is merely the propagation of a species because life has no higher purpose or meaning, then why do we even have sex anymore? Because we can artificially inseminate people, and the answer is we don't have sex anymore. Why do we still believe in that? Do you know what the national averages are in the United States for sexual frequency between husband and wife in a marriage? Anyone want to venture a guess? How often do people have sex? Twice a week? Yeah, if they're on a Viagra drip, maybe, yeah. And the national average is once a week. Sounds like a lot, 52 times a week. That's a year, that's not bad. Until you read on, that once a week lasts for 7.5 minutes at a time. That includes all the time he spends begging. So why do we still believe in sex? In fact, and I wish Richard were here so he could respond, I recall very distinctly that he said in one of our debates at Oxford that he doesn't really believe in love, and most evolutionary biologists don't either. Look, God can't be seen, felt, touched, heard. Neither can love. No one has ever seen love. You've only ever experienced it. And even that, an evolutionary biologist will tell you, is delusional. Love is a trick played on the mind in order to ensure that you have sex and propagate the species. Thank God the delusion has now been dealt away with. We can have sex well without it. Oh, yeah. But Richard Dawkins didn't attack marriage, sex, human relationships, the family either. Even though it's not true. Our nature doesn't seem to be programmed for monogamy, and it doesn't work anymore. It's only religion that bothers him, which is curious. The second point he made was, well, God is not real, and he's a delusion, and evolution is. And yet he himself knows that it's still the theory of evolution. Scientists have not yet called it the fact of evolution, and there's many reasons for that. And yet he believes in evolution, and that's his prerogative. That's okay. And why? Because given enough time, anything can happen, correct? Isn't that what he said? He said that all of these principles that would say that such incredible complexity cannot come from randomness become possible with time. How much time? Well, it used to be 4 billion years. Then it went to 10 billion. Now we're at 14 billion. No doubt by the time my kids grow up, we will now say that the universe is 30 billion years old. Richard Dawkins believes in time, period. Given enough time, anything can happen. The human mind can evolve, the eye can evolve. It's just a question of semantics. I believe in an infinitely powerful God. He believes in infinitely powerful time. It's the same thing. We just call it by a different name. Do you know why they have such a problem with religion? They think that religion is all about creation. The story of creation takes 2 to 3 chapters in the book of Genesis. That's it. The central message of religion is something completely different. The central message of religion is that human beings have choice, that they can exercise moral virtue in this world, that they are not programmed by instinct or genetic predetermination, that they can choose to transcend their nature and be monogamous and be loving. We are capable of those decisions. It's called conscience, and no animal has it. And it could never evolve because it's not something genetic. There is no creature on the face of the earth, no matter how complex. They can tell us all they want. As Richard Dawkins says in his new book, he says, we are not like primates. We are primates. But we can hold our existence in the palm of our hand and examine it as if we were an outside third party and determine to change our ways and make them better. My God, if that isn't an infinite power. We have the capacity to be angels or to be animals. Isn't that everything you've heard in this religious discussion up until now? That religion is the cause of all the pain in the world? Look, I could fight back if we were in a debate, and I'd say that atheism is the cause of most of the world's pain. The fact is that aggressive Marxist, totalitarian, atheistic ideologies in the 20th century have killed orders of magnitude more people than all the religions in the world combined. So I could fight back and say it's the atheists who really have killed, but what's the point? It's not atheists who did it, and it wasn't religious people who did it. It was people who exercised terrible choice because they had no values. The central message of religion is that what you become is all in your hands, period. It is the exact opposite of the message of evolution, which is you are an animal who cannot control his destiny. The central message of religion is what we do is what we become, and it's the one unifying message of all religion. And it is the centerpiece of Western civilization because every single one of you believes it. You raise your kids with that message. Whether you're an atheist or whether you're the most religious fanatic on earth, you raise your kids to understand that how they behave and what they do will ultimately determine what they become. We are not just thinking primates. We are not just conditioned and controlled by our instincts. We are capable of being generous when it's against our nature. We are capable of curbing our temper when we are in a fury. We are capable of inspiring our children and swimming against the soulless message of modern materialistic society. Each of us have incalculable, inestimable divine value. That is a message that I want to live by. I hope and trust that we will not allow any of our prejudices to govern our choices, but rather our choices will obliterate our prejudices. God bless you. Thank you.